Okay, moving on. So AI for target market research. Feel free to ask me questions and interrupt at any point in time as well. Okay, so this is Tom Bilyeu. If you don't know him, you can look him up on YouTube, multi-billionaire, gazillionaire. I don't know how rich he is now, but this is the old way of doing market validation. You had an idea, you would build it out for months, which was very expensive. You discover, or you launch it, you discover nobody really wants it or nobody's really willing to pay for it. And you're like, oh crap. You go back and you repeat the cycle. So very expensive way of doing things. Next slide, please, Al. Thank you. Now things have changed quite a bit. So you can do most of your research online. But again, like all this information, all this data is publicly available. So you might as well tap into it. And it doesn't cost you money. Before AI, you could potentially hire a company that would go out there and do all this market validation for you to see if it's worth it for you to build out your product. And of course, that would cost thousands and thousands of dollars, but you no longer need to do that. So you can ask AI to search all public forums for complaints about your specific problem. And then you can have it extract patterns and pain points. I recommend you do this step by step. Don't take all this and dump it into your AI model all at once. Break it up so that the information stays as clean and tight as possible. And then review everything that it's giving you. If it's giving you something that you think is not relevant, tell it. Keep it on track. Have it look for emotional language and recurring complaints. Emotional language is super important because you probably know humans make decisions based off of their emotions and then they justify it with facts afterwards. So you want to make sure that your language is connecting with them on an emotional level. And then, of course, recurring complaints. If many people are complaining about something, there's a need for a solution. And then ask your AI model to score each pain point. So if one pain point has maybe, let's say, over 1,000 complaints about this one thing, and then another one has maybe 10, the one that has 10 is irrelevant to you, right? The market, the demand is not high enough. If there's no real pain, the idea is dead. So don't pursue it. Market size analysis. So this is another important one. This one I learned the hard way years ago when I was launching a different business. But if you ever want to know about that, just ask me about it. So check to make sure that, like I said earlier, the market is big enough, that there's enough people that have this problem. So you can analyze Google Trends over multiple timeframes. And this is important because what was a pain point last year may no longer be a pain point. And there might be a new pain point emerging. So if you play around in Google Analytics, you can see the year-over-year trends. This is what you're trying to find out. And you don't have to use Google Analytics for this. Again, you could just tap into data that's publicly available. You want to, of course, calculate the search volume for problem-related keywords. Now, with AI is changing the landscape, and we'll dive into that in a bit. There's less focus on keywords and more focus on search intent because more people are using AI to hire service providers and to search for products. They're typing in much longer queries. So it's no longer keywords. So before it might be, for example, Calgary plumber. Now someone might ask AI, find me a plumber in my community that fixes backed up sewers or some septic, what are they called? Some the pumps in the basement.
Yep.
Yeah, whatever they're called. So people are using far more descriptive language to ask AI to make recommendations. And of course, you want to address the TAM, the addressable market. Was your solution for your community, for your city, for your province, for all of Canada, global, depending on how far you want to go. That's important information for you to know because that's going to maybe impact your pricing. So if your solution is very targeted, the population in that area will tell you how likely your revenue is going to be. And of course, create detailed spreadsheets of potential user segments. You want to know who else can benefit from your application or your solution. So David, in your case, you're thinking one market segment, but there, as you and I talked about, there could be many other applications for your solution. All right, competitor analysis. I love this. I love digging up dirt on our competitors. And you probably will as well. So pick out who you think your top competitors are. And I also recommend ask AI who it thinks your top competitors are and see where this is different. Initially, like when we started out New Idea Machine, I was, like I said, really digging into our competitors and what they're doing. And then we pivoted because, and this is a side thing, because we decided to build a company based on our values. And what I realized is the competitors don't have our values. So I thought, okay, I no longer need to worry about them. And I stopped worrying about them. And thankfully, it didn't hurt our business. It actually really improved our business because they can't compete with our values. And that's what I was saying earlier, David. Like the way that you are thinking about the problem and the solution is very different than someone else. And the way that you process that information and make those calculations may not be very easy to copy unless you maybe tell someone exactly what your formula is. So I think you're safe in that area. So you want AI to identify gaps in the market. You want it to highlight oversaturated areas, and it could do this within minutes. You want it to map customer complaints about existing solutions. Again, this is what your competitors are doing, and find price inefficiencies that you can exploit. Now, in my industry, in software, people keep their pricing very close to their chest. They do not want to share this publicly. However, what I found was, based on my research with AI, that is a huge deterrent for my ideal clients because they are worried that if they book a discovery call, that I'm going to pressure them into, I'm going to basically shove something down their throat and force them to sign up. Of course, we're not like that, but that's the perception out there, right? So one of the things that AI recommended was to be honest about our pricing and be transparent. And on the new site, you could see that there's a pricing page because nobody else is doing that. So that's a huge competitive advantage to me. Of course, I'm going to capitalize on it. So I wouldn't have had that data had I not used AI for that purpose. Thanks, Al. Early adopter interviews, like I mentioned, you can have AI draft outreach messages. And then I want you to take that message and I want you to try to say it yourself from memory and record yourself because the way that we type sounds amazing. And you're like, oh, this is so professional and polished, but it's not human. How would you explain this message to someone? If you met someone at an event and you want to ask them for their opinion, how would you actually speak that message and then take that and use that? It may not be as polished, but people resonate far more with it. You wanted to generate interview questions. Of course, use your judgment here. I asked AI to generate the questions for this bootcamp, for the survey. I had some ideas of what I want to extract, and then it gave me a bunch of recommendations, and I decided which ones to go with. Of course, you analyze interview transcripts for patterns and insights. Like I mentioned, record every conversation you have. There's so much valuable data in there that you can't even possibly anticipate. And then you want to capitalize on that as well. And create a decision matrix based on feedback. This is very insightful. So you give AI all this data and you say to it, okay, based on this, what are the opportunities? What direction should I be going in? And again, it'll give you things that you did not think are possible. And of course, you want to make sure that there's enough demand for your idea. The entire purpose of this is to make sure that people are willing to pay. There's enough people that are willing to pay you enough money to make this worthwhile for you to pursue. Okay, so this prompt is a prompt that is very thorough. You can copy it. And Lucia, thank you for putting that in the chat. And you can dump it into your favorite AI tool, and it will extract all the data that you need. So there's just a small little, just insert what it is that you're doing in there. And then you can use this prompt as is, or you can build on it as needed. And it will do everything that we just talked about. You want to make sure that the AI model cites everything, that it has to tell you where this data is coming from because it can hallucinate, right? And then take a moment to go in there and check a links because I've caught it flat out lying to me. And AI would be like, here's the resource that quotes this. And I look at it, I'm like, no, you're out to lunch. And then it would argue with me. Claude hasn't done this, Gemini has. It argued with me for 5 minutes. And I'm like, I'm telling you, I'm reading this article and it does not tell me what you just quoted me. And then finally, it's like, okay, you caught me.
Wow. Okay. That's
Yeah. So ask it to reference all the data you want to, and then check it to make sure that it's accurate. And then when you go in armed with that, and then on top of that, customer interviews, then he can't poke holes at that.
great. Okay. Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? Does was how do I want to ask this? The information I just shared, is this information that you guys already know?
I would say I'm aware of, yes, because I've done my own research in on this particular aspect of it. So what I found satisfying is everything you've just shared reinforces what I already heard.
And I was wondering, I wanted to ask, you're recommending Perplexity for market research. So is it, and I understand that there are LLMs have their specialty. So you go to Claude for this type of work. But so you're saying Perplexity for market research? Is that?
Perplexity is definitely a favorite amongst a lot of people for market research. For whatever reason, I don't gravitate towards Perplexity. I do love Claude. And then when it comes to copy, sometimes I'll lean on Gemini because it tends to produce copy that is more human sounding, like more conversational. But it really depends on
Okay.
you. And then sometimes too, if I want information that I know will not be filtered, I'll use ChatGPT because they tend to have less restrictions than other LLMs. And then Grok, I haven't used Grok in ages, but I have heard people say if you want unfiltered information, go to Grok.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Very. Thanks.
You're welcome.